Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the DC Capstone Report. It is great to be back with you on this podcast on Alabama football. And yes, folks, just think how time has flown by during this fall camp. Next week at this time, we'll be previewing the upcoming game against the Western Kentucky. That's going to happen on August the 31st there in Bryant-Denny Stadium at 6 p.m. But this week on the podcast, we're going to continue our fall camp preview. We're going to look at the defense today. So today is all about the defense. And first of all, I want to thank Lance Shores, who's back in the studio making all things happen for this podcast. Each and every week, Lance does such a great job of producing, getting everything ready, so it's up on all of our platforms. You can check us out at dccapstonereport.com. We would love for you to go to our website and look at that, dccapstonereport.com. We got all of our sponsors up there that you can go and click on buttons and find our sponsors. And speaking of our sponsors, we want to thank RollTideBama.com and FreelancePictures.com, two websites that Lance has that can get you some great Alabama content and some wonderful photography. One thing I don't talk about enough is that Lance Shores is a photographer. He is so good. He has got some wonderful still shots of hummingbirds and other things that you can see on his website there on FreelancePictures.com. So go check that out for some great photography and also some great Alabama football content. As Lance will be putting up a lot of pictures for the $1 Million Band and cheerleaders and Crimsonettes as we get to our first game on the 31st. Also want to thank our sponsor, Karen Cottingham Realtor, right here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, with the Williams Group at Keller Williams. Karen does a great job. She sponsors our podcast each and every week. You can go to our website at dccapstonereport.com and click on the link to Karen Cottingham's site and see all of the listings that she can show you right here in Tuscaloosa and around the state of Alabama. She can help you anywhere. If you want to list or you want to sell, she can do it for you. Reach out to Karen, tell her you heard about it here on the podcast on DC Capstone Report. And that's her phone number is 205-887-4008. Well, let's get back to the podcast today. We thank y'all for tuning in, and Lance and I appreciate everyone over the last 2 weeks just tuned in. It looks like we've had over 3,000 plays on both of our podcasts over the last 2 weeks, and just amazes us that the number of people want to look and listen to what we have to say about Alabama football. So today on the podcast, we're going to look at all about defense. And we're going to start in the first segment and preview the defensive line and linebackers. In our second segment, we're going to tune in on the cornerbacks and safeties. And in the final and third segment, we're going to look at the players to watch on defense for this Alabama football team 2024.
You're listening to the DC Capstone Report. The DC Capstone Report is featured each Tuesday morning on the Martin Houston Show at Tide 100.9. You can listen live at Tide100.9.com.
Well, welcome back to the podcast. Again, this is DC with the DC Capstone Report, and we are glad to be with you today. In our first segment, we're going to take a look. It's all about defense, and we're going to talk about the defensive line and linebackers. Before we do that, just look at an overview. It's a different defensive scheme than we've had in the past. It's going to be led by defensive coordinator Kane Womack. Kane Womack has had some media availabilities where we've been able to hear this year already talk about this defense. And everyone talks about how different it is from the Coach Saban defense. And what I want everyone to know is it is different in certain things, mostly in terms and how implement. But it's not something that we haven't seen as Alabama players in years past, especially the last 2 years. It looks like that Coach Saban had been going more and more to this type of defensive setup, and he called it nickel and dime packages. And that's when we would get into those packages probably about 80% of the time when we would face those teams that was called for. But Kane Womack's system is just, it defaults to that. It's just a considered package where the whole defensive scheme is built around this concept of having 5 defensive backs on the field at all times. So from everything I'm hearing, everybody is excited about the defense, excited about Kane Womack and what he brings to this position. We've heard him talk about opportunities he's had to meet with Coach Saban and talk about the meetings he's had. In a couple of those meetings, Coach Saban has been able to tell him and others that this is the kind of defense that he wanted to go to all along, moving closer and closer to do. Then Kane Womack is just the one that's been able to implement that. And this new defensive coordinator, I believe, is going to bring to the table a lot of different sets, a lot of different ways to get these players to reach their full potential. So right here, let's tone in on the defensive line. Start with, I think one of the strongest components of this Alabama football team is of all the players on defensive line is the experience that they bring to the table, and I believe it's going to be the number of players as well. But I believe that in Coach Womack's system, there's going to be opportunities for some linemen to really play in different positions, and the terminology may be a little different to you, but I think it's going to be in positions where they can take advantage of their athleticism. So across the defensive line, there's several players I think that you'll see play. There's a couple of positions on the air that maybe sound different, and one is the bandit position. That's a defensive edge lineman that's allowed to use athleticism to shut down the run and to rush the passer as well. And it looks like we got two in that position that's really showed out this fall, and that's Jamarian Latham that we're familiar with, and then a transfer, L.T. Overton. L.T. Overton is a transfer in from Texas A&M. Looks like this kind of defense is going to take advantage of his skill set, and I've heard nothing but great things about L.T. Overton and Jamarian Latham. I think they're going to be interchangeable. Not sure which one's going to start. Maybe L.T. Overton, maybe Jamarian Latham, but either one will be interchangeable, and they're both going to get a lot of snaps on this defense. A run stopper, a rushing the quarterback from that bandit edge position. Some young guys behind them. You got Jordan Renaud, Keon Keeley. Both of them have been playing that bandit position and learning. I think they've got a little while to go. Possibly could contribute. I believe that mostly Jamarian Latham and L.T. Overton. I've seen and heard from some of these fall practices and scrimmages that L.T. Overton is the real deal, that he really lights up when he gets on the field, and he's been making some big plays at that bandit position. You move in toward the interior of that defensive line, you got nose tackle position that comes next. In that nose tackle position, I think Tim Keenan and Damon Payne have really been the ones to solidify that position. So I think we're at least two deep with great experience, and they'll be interchangeable as well. But look for Tim Keenan and Damon Payne to nail down that nose tackle position, that run stopper in the middle that pushes the pocket and really does a good job of disrupting the quarterback. So look for Tim Keenan and Damon Payne to play that nose tackle position. And then on the defensive tackle position, returning, you got Jaheim Otis and Tim Smith. Two names there that are really been in Alabama football for a while, know the process. Both of them have made statements to the fact that they love this new Kane Womack defense and have an opportunity to really make a difference. So I think that you're going to see a lot from these six names: Jamarian Latham, L.T. Overton, Tim Keenan, Damon Payne, Jaheim Otis, and Tim Smith on this defensive line. And then I'm going to tell you a third player to watch in our third and final segment on there as well that can make some headway to get into that lineup. You might be 7 deep, folks, on that line, interchangeable, coming in and out, keeping fresh, and still not lose anything on the running and the pass defense from that defensive line. Well, let's work out to our linebacker position. And the first thing we're going to look at in the linebacker position is our inside linebackers positions. I think you got the Mike linebacker and the Sting linebacker, and I believe that those are two players that with a lot of experience. Deontay Lawson will hold down that Mike position, and he's going to be the quarterback of the defense. He'll be making the calls on the front end for the defensive, the communication between the headsets and the in-ear monitor in his helmet. I think he'll be making a lot of those calls. In the Sting, you got Jihad Campbell, another player who played a lot of snaps last year. A great opportunity for him to make a contribution this year in that defensive Mike and Sting position, the linebackers. And it looks to me that right behind them is Justin Jefferson. When you hear any of the coaches talk about, including Kane Womack, who's coaching the defensive coordinator position, but also has a lot to do with the linebackers. He talks about these three players, and he considers Justin Jefferson a starter as well. Remember, Justin Jefferson had some time at LSU, transferred in, had some time at Alabama last year. So look for Deontay Lawson, Jihad Campbell, and Justin Jefferson to really be those three linebackers at that Mike and Sting position. A third one to throw in there is Jeremiah Alexander. I think he's moving from outside to inside, and he has a lot of athleticism and speed. And one of the things about this new system, the linebacker position, is it allows for people to run athletically for the ball, run at the ball. I don't think it's more of a Coach Saban's was more of a gap sound defense, and this is a more run to the ball and get your athletic ability to make the plays while your defensive linemen occupy the gaps. And I believe that you're going to see Deontay Lawson, Jihad Campbell, and Justin Jefferson really make some strides and really do a good job in this defense. It's going to cause them to be able to play more athletic, and they're all some athletic players there. So the other linebacker position is what they call the wolf, and that wolf is an outside linebacker position that rushes the quarterback, and we saw that last year. You might think of Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell in this type of position. From years past, that outside linebacker has done so many great things to disrupt the quarterback and get some sacks, like Will Anderson Jr. did when he was here. So I think this wolf position is that position that's going to cause a run free on the quarterback, be able to. This Kane Womack's position defense is a little simpler, and each one of these will have a job to do. And I believe this wolf position will be putting pressure on the quarterback and chasing down the ball and running situations. Look for Quindarius Robinson, Q Robinson, fifth-year senior, to come in and be the person to man that wolf position. Behind him, you got Keon Colt, Q Rusall, another player, Yanzi Pierre. All those have opportunities to compete for that job, but I think Q Robinson will win it. Keanu Colt will come off the bench to give him an opportunity to spell him, and you might see Q Rusall get in there as well down the road. So the defensive linebacker positions are going to be a position of strength on this defense, and I think that bodes well for this Alabama defense going forward into 2024. Well, welcome back to the DC Capstone Report. Thank you all for tuning in again. I want to thank Lance Shores back in the studio for all he's doing to make this possible, producing this podcast. I want to thank our sponsors, RollTideBama.com, FreelancePictures.com, and again, Karen Cottingham, Realtor, right here at the Williams Group at Keller Williams. For all your real estate needs, seek out Karen Cottingham, 205-887-4008. Well, back on the second segment, we're going to take a look at the back end of the defense. We just did an intensive study of the defensive line linebackers. Now we move to the cornerbacks and safeties. So a lot of folks will tell you that this is a question mark coming into this year, that who's going to play in the cornerback positions, because we've had so many attrition of people leaving for the NFL and just graduation has taken a lot out of that cornerback room. But who's going to be the one that's going to step up? Well, there's a lot of different people, I believe, that are vying for positions here. You got two transfers in, Deshaun Jones and Damani Jackson, I think, are competing for starting positions at the left cornerback and right cornerback in this Kane Womack defense. And I believe that when you look at it, some folks will say, well, they have the opportunity to compete for the starting job and win it because they've got so much experience. That's good to have that experience. But don't sell short some of the players that are young players that are freshmen and behind them, because what I'm hearing from the coaches, Colin Hitchler and Maurice Lindquist, who are coaching these defensive backs, they're saying that these freshmen are really giving them a push at these positions at cornerback. So you got Deshaun Jones, who's a transfer in, Damani Jackson, the transfer in, both of them expected to compete for a starting cornerback position. Behind them, you got two freshmen, Xavier Brown and Xavier Mincy. Xavier Brown, from all intents and purposes, what I've heard, he's had a setback with a injury of his hand, but he hadn't let that be a setback. He has played to the fullest potential for him, even through the injury. He hasn't missed a beat and has done really well. He has coverage skills. He has been able to play in this defense well and pick it up well. And then Xavier Mincy, another freshman, who were both early signees, early enrollees, gone through the spring ball and going through now fall camp, have had an opportunity to compete for these starting roles. So who's going to start? I don't know. Would it be the ones with experience, Damani Jackson and Deshaun Jones, the transfers? Or would it be Xavier Brown and Xavier Mincy? I think they all have an opportunity to start in this game. And then behind them, you got Jalen Mbakwe, who is another true freshman, summer enrollee, who's really come in and did a good job of going up against some of the great talent we have at wide receiver and iron sharpening iron. So, Jalen Mbakwe is another person that might have an opportunity to contribute into this cornerback room. So what people have thought was going to be a weakness for us might end up being a strength because of the way these freshmen are coming along. And I say that because I believe they're coming along in a system that's friendly for them to understand. I believe the Kane Womack system is simpler for these defensive backs to grasp hold of, and they are all doing the right things to do that. And the one thing you're going to see different than this Kane Womack system for the back end is something I think all Alabama fans will be proud of, and that is they're going to be playing the ball instead of playing the man. And I think that's we've seen a lot of times where we've missed opportunities because we hadn't have our eyes on the ball. And I think this way, playing the ball, running to the ball, gives opportunity for more takeaways and gives opportunity for more help from the safeties for our corners. So I really think that we're going to be able to see a big difference in the cornerback room, that maybe it's not a weakness. Maybe it becomes a hidden strength because of the transfer in experience, as well as the freshmen who've had an opportunity to come in and play in this Kane Womack defense and make a big splash. So I look for Deshaun Jones, Damani Jackson, Xavier Brown, Xavier Mincy, and Jalen Mbakwe to be your cornerbacks that make a difference in 2024. Let's move on to the safety position. In this backfield with 5, you got a strong safety and a free safety. And in this position, the free safety is a well-known name, fifth-year Malachi Moore, starter, played for Alabama, played a lot of ball, has a lot of experience. He's going to be the back-end quarterback on the defense, calling the plays back there. And then you got a transfer in who's got a lot of experience from Michigan at Keon Sabb. So I think Keon Sabb and Malachi Moore, we are really good at that safety position. I think it's going to be a strength. And then behind them, you got King Mack, another transfer in that's got some experience, so that's really good. And then Dre Kirkpatrick Jr., a true freshman who's made some strides of being a lot like his dad. Just got to put on some weight and get into the weight room, and I think he might have a chance to contribute on special teams even this year. But that safety position, look for it to make a lot of splash this year in interceptions and takeaways and turnovers. So I'm expecting big things out of Malachi Moore and Keon Sabb and King Mack going forward from the safety position. And then the final position in the safeties is that hybrid position that the coach Womack calls the husky position. Now this is a position that's that fifth defensive back, can help out in run defense, can support, and can also play in pass coverage when you got 5 wideouts or a tight end that's in there with 4 wideouts. So this is something that I think we would know as a nickel, but it's a full defense all the time, husky position. And the leader in that position going into the fall camp and coming out of fall camp will be Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith has had some experience here at Alabama, had let injuries take him out of the lineup last year, opportunity to play. And this year he comes back really ready to go, and in all intents and purposes, what I've heard come out of the fall camp, he's good to go and looking really good at that husky position. Another player that can contribute there would be a true freshman, Red Morgan. Look for this true freshman, Red Morgan, in a position that he's well familiar with. Coming out of high school, he's been able to ease into the position and do a good job in the fall, that his name has been called several times by some of the coaches. So I believe we're in good hands. Again, this hole between the safeties, the Huskies, and the cornerbacks, once thought as a weakness, might just be a hidden strength of this Alabama defense in 2024. Well, welcome back to the DC Capstone Report. We're here in the third and final segment where I like to go over this. This is going to be our last fall camp preview. Next week, we're going to be getting into the real game preview of the upcoming game against Western Kentucky. But Here are some players that I want to highlight, players to watch on the defensive side of the ball that you may not be familiar with their names and have a chance to contribute this year. Let's go to the defensive line. You know, many years ago, on my podcast, we acknowledged a player that we were seeing in fall camp that might be a player that would one day make a big name for himself. And that was none other than Quinnen Williams. And, you know, Quinnen Williams came off that defensive line and did a great job and made a name for himself playing in the NFL. Another player we identified was Christian Barmore. And then he made a name for himself and went on to be an NFL prospect. Well, there's a player on this defensive line that I haven't spoke of yet. He's not even in the first 7 players that I mentioned. His name is James Smith. Look for James Smith. Not Tim Smith, James Smith. Another player on the defensive line that has all the attributes to play that defensive tackle position behind Jaheim Otis and Tim Smith. And I think that he can get in the rotation and work his way up. He can make a name for himself as one of the great defensive linemen that plays from that defensive tackle position, that stops the run stopper, but also puts the pressure on the pocket of that quarterback. So I believe James Smith is a defensive lineman to watch in 2024. Another position to watch on the defensive side of the ball is the linebacker wolf position. I believe Kendarius Robinson and Keanu Coate are your first two off the board in that position. But the third one is a player out of Montgomery named Qua Rusal. And Rusal has done everything that's been asked of him in this fall camp to learn the defense, to transition into playing athletic and playing that position of wolf to get to the quarterback, and he had done a really good job of that. So I look for another name on the defensive side of the ball that you will hear a lot from this year in 2024. They'd be Q Rusal or Qua Rusal, Q as they call him. Another player on the defensive side of the ball is from the linebacker position as well. Is a young freshman who's turning heads in the fall. I don't know if you've heard a lot about him, but his last name is a little hard to pronounce. But his first name is Justin Okoronkwo. Justin Okoronkwo. Look for him to make a difference, to get into this starting. He's behind Jihad Campbell and Justin Jefferson and Jeremiah Alexander and Deontay Lawson, but this freshman has been turning some heads, and I think he might be one to really make some exciting plays on the special teams, much like Mac Wilson sprang on the field where he got on special teams and made some plays that eventually show you how great of a player he's going to be. And he might even get on the field in the linebacker position as well this year, but look for Justin Okoronkwo. And then finally, my final player to watch on the defense is one that I've heard so many great things about in the cornerback position, and that is a true freshman, Jalen Mbakwe. And not only in the cornerback position, but look for him to be a star on special teams, maybe at some point even running the ball back on punt returns or kickoff returns. This Jalen Mbakwe has the speed, but man, he is a really great tackler in open space as well. So I think he might be on both of the special team units on coverage and on returns at some point in his career here at Alabama. So my players to watch are James Smith on the defensive line, Q Russo at the wolf position, Justin Okoronkwo on the linebacker position, and Jalen Mbakwe at cornerback and special teams. Well, that's it, folks. The DC Capstone Report this week. Thank you all for tuning in. This is DC signing off this week. We'll be back next week with another podcast as we begin our preview of the upcoming season and our first game against Western Kentucky. Until then, this is DC with the DC Capstone Report. I hope everyone comes back next week, and y'all have a great week. Roll Tide.